Ask a British person what they love about England and the pub will most definitely come up. Ask a Black British person what they love about England and I don't think pub would even be in the top 5. There's something very EDL, very reform, very get out my country about British pubs, and that's what's put me off them for a long time, and I know a lot of other Black Brits share the same sentiment, but I do think this is something that's changing with the rise in national pride among Black Brits. We are colonising Wetherspoons across the country, and so much of this has to do with our ever-changing relationship with British heritage, especially in fashion, in music, the UK underground scene, how we're showing up in spaces, and also specifically the cost of living crisis. Welcome back to the Discourse Department. My name's Siwasi Siwe. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple Music, I'm so sorry to you. If you're watching, congratulations, you win, because you get to see my outfit and these cute little blue socks and my little pink top, which I'm obsessed with. Give me a big fat thumbs up in the comments if you like what I'm wearing. As usual, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, please click the follow button and give me a rating, drop me a comment. All of this stuff goes such a long way. And I appreciate those of you who are returning listeners. If you're new, hello and welcome. Let's get straight into it. The British pub is one of the most beloved institutions in the UK, so much so that people speak about it with a tenderness that sort of borders on romance, in my opinion. Ask many white Britons what they love about this country and the pub will most definitely come up. Their local pub, Sunday roast at the pub quizzes, first dates at the pub, watching football at the pub. The pub quite literally is a shorthand for community. It is Britishness in its most physical form. And yet, despite being British myself, I've never instinctively felt that way or experienced the pub in that way. For me, pubs have always represented a version of Britain that atmospherically felt quite closed off to me. These have always read as spaces coded by a certain kind of whiteness, a certain kind of masculinity, a certain kind of nostalgia for something, a history that's never really included me. Even if no one has explicitly said anything to me while I've been in a pub, there's that feeling where you're entering into a space where you're visible in a way that others aren't. The pub is so often described as universal, but it's never really felt that way. And that discomfort I find so difficult to articulate. Even in me putting this video together, I was struggling to pin it down. And that's because they are very ordinary spaces. You have pubs on every street, they're everywhere. They're casual and they're technically open to everyone. But I think that it's within these ordinary spaces that reveal, I guess, the most truths about a place, about a country. They show us who gets to move comfortably, who's noticed moving in those spaces, who belongs in those spaces without effort, and who has to consciously enter into those spaces. To be completely honest, this is not me coming on here and saying pubs need to be more inclusive and I wish they were and I feel so left out, yada yada yada, because even if I was white, I would not be a pub girly. Like, if you've seen the way I leave my house, I wear 6-inch heels and micro mini skirts and latex tops. I like bars and French 75s and Mai Tais, and I want to be in a place that feels clean. A pub is not for me. So this is not me saying, woe is me, I wish pubs were more inclusive, because really and truly, I don't give a fuck. I really don't need to see the DEI statistics of my local spoons. That being said, I am intellectually curious about Black British people's relationships with pubs, specifically now with this rise of national pride among Black Brits, especially because as of recent, I have been to a couple pubs, guys. I have. And I was the one to initiate it. But I think I am part of that conversation. My attitudes towards pubs have changed, but I think I am also participating in this rise of national pride among Black Brits. So first of all, what is a pub? Now, I have a lot of international listeners. Hello, the US. Hello, South Africa. Hello, Germany, Australia, wherever else. I have a lot of international listeners, so I need to first of all establish what a pub is. A pub is short for public house. It's a place for drinking, gathering, socializing, and local life. Historically, it's always been tied to neighborhood identity, labor culture, and routine. It's a place where people would go to unwind after work, to exchange gossip, to watch sports, to celebrate, to mourn. It really is an institution that sits at the epicenter of Britishness. It is the most quintessentially British institution you can find. Look at our pop culture, for example. Pubs are referenced all across a bunch of British songs. Even in our TV, a lot of soaps, Emmerdale, Coronation Street, EastEnders, a pub is really at the heart and the centre of those shows. The Queen Vic, infamously associated with EastEnders. Pubs are recurring spaces across British culture. But like many institutions, it was shaped around the people who occupy it the most. And in practice, that often meant local people, white people, men. Now, this was never explicitly written on the doors, but, you know, culture is what creates ownership. That's also why pubs feel so different to other public spaces like restaurants and cafes and bars. Traditional, very local pubs run on these very soft social codes, very British social codes. They have regulars, they have unwritten norms. There's a rhythm already in motion when you walk in that's established by the people who've been going there for generations. People know each other, you know, the staff know each other's faces, and if you are a newcomer, it is instantly legible that you are a newcomer. Now, when I say pubs give EDL, they give Get Out My Country, I'm not saying that every single pub in the UK is racist. But what I am saying is that certain pubs, and the most traditional ones, carry the visual language, the culture of a version of Britain that feels very exclusionary. So, you know, St. George's flags in the windows, football nationalism, no nonsense anti-PC British talk, Brexit conversations, just non-PC banter. And for a lot of minorities, a lot of us, this kind of nationalism doesn't read as warm. It's not very welcome or inviting. And I think oftentimes it arrives to us as a reminder that we're not a part of the nation, but we sit adjacent to it. For this institution to exist that is literally sits at the epicenter of Britishness, it sometimes feels so distant, and again, like a reminder that you're actually not part of this country. And pubs have historically been one of those places where that performance of Britishness is most concentrated. That's why if a tourist was to come to the UK, if I bumped into a tourist on the street outside right now and they said, I have 6 hours left in London and I really want to experience the most British experience I could have, I'm not sending them to Buckingham Palace or to Parliament or to see the London Eye. I'm sending them to a pub. I'm going to tell them, keep walking till you find the first pub that you see and go straight into there. And that's because a pub is the kind of space where nationalism is easy to find. Nationalism lives in these very mundane, seemingly mundane or ordinary spaces, as opposed to the more official ones, that performative type of Britishness, which is outside Buckingham Palace. Now, while that's true for certain pubs, especially ones in smaller towns, in more homogenous parts of the UK, very British parts of Britain, I think this has changed drastically over time, and that is Gen Z's doing. The pub has expanded. It's no longer a preserve for white middle-class old men. It is increasingly becoming a safe space, a haven for Gen Z, for young people across the country. There's a Financial Times article that wrote about it, and it basically was talking about how so many young people living at home who are basically priced out of nightlife, they can't afford their own space. They don't have third spaces, they don't have community, and it's something that we're striving for. And the pub offers that. A pub is cheap, it's informal, you don't need to book it, you can sit there for hours, and it's communal, it's a community space. And for Gen Z, it is just as much a space for practicality as it is tradition. Pubs are so conveniently practical for us, and the Financial Times article goes into this a bit more. 71% of Gen Z are still living at home with family, and having a third space like a pub is so convenient for us because it's somewhere that, again, is cheap and affordable. They're everywhere. There's so many of them. For those of us who can't host or have people around because we have a flat share or we live with our parents, that loss of the third space is driving us to want to be in a pub, as well as the cost of living, because no one can fucking afford all bar one. Adjacent to this yearning for a cheap, affordable third space is also, I think, a yearning for heritage. A yearning for heritage and national pride. Dan Clark, an events host and pub regular in Tottenham, said in this Financial Times article, he said this, he said, a recent night he hosted was packed with younger people. He said, there's a real spirit of acceptance here. The young creatives have embraced the pub as it's an easygoing, non-threatening atmosphere and the management are happy too. The events bring people in. Now, there are contradicting articles out there which made the research for this a bit difficult, because I was trying to figure out if there's been an increase of Gen Z people going to pubs and whether it's because of that or not, but all the information online is contradictory. There are some articles saying that pubs are dying. There are some saying that Gen Z are going more than ever before. I don't know. But I think the most interesting find from this Financial Times article is this quote that I want to read out. Pubs also offer something else that these entertainment-themed bars cannot, and that's heritage. Young people's attraction to heritage is well documented, from fashion houses digging through their archives to the frankly remarkable transformation of Guinness from an old man's pint to an ageless icon. Young people, we're becoming increasingly obsessed with heritage and national pride and national identity. And I do think that social media has accelerated that a lot. TikTok and Twitter especially, they've become these sort of global stages where national identities are constantly being performed, constantly being mocked, constantly being defended. Brits versus Americans is basically its own subgenre of the internet now. We're always fighting with the Americans. The second an American person gets online to bash British food, beans on toast, a Sunday roast, it is just the funniest thing to witness, because it's like all of us will rise out of whatever situation we are in and unite and hold hands and fight. Blacks, browns, whites, Gen Zs, millennials, we become keyboard warriors overnight, and all of a sudden the UK is the best place on earth to live, and we will die defending this place over beans on toast. And I participate in this too. I'll be the first person to say that this country is a pack of piss, but let someone from the outside say anything about a Sunday roast, I'm not having it. And I know this kind of low stakes digital patriotism sounds silly, it sounds trivial, it sounds like a bit of banter, but it's so important in this conversation because it's showing that young people are more conscious of their Britishness, they're more conscious of being British, and also how it shows up and how they perform that Britishness. And that shift especially matters for Black Brits.
Oi, mate! I'm pegging that man at the back of the bus.
I think that older generations of Black Brits have a more cautious relationship with Britain, with Britishness, because Britain itself is very rejecting and has been for them and for us too. To claim British identity too enthusiastically when you know that racism is structural, it's a very complicated thing to sit with. To sit and hold pride for a place that you grew up in, that you love, that a lot of us were born in. Also knowing the torture and the pain that it's put our parents through in immigrating here, just historically, British colonialism and imperialism, us knowing the context of that history and still having to, I guess, sit with this newfound pride. And it's a very complex thing to sit with. But I think what I'm noticing amongst Black Brits like myself, I think we are more increasingly comfortable with claiming Britishness on our own terms. So we are able to hold these multiple truths and say, fuck this country, but also, this is my country too. We're seeing this in the UK underground scene. We see it in film, we see it in fashion, in album artwork, in branding. We see it in language as well. If you look at the UK underground rap scene, for example, Jim Legacy naming his debut album Black British Music, YT's album being called Oi, slightly more complex and doesn't really complement my point, but I'm still going to make the point anyway, but Sibo's Blair Babies, less so UK underground and I guess more mainstream, but Pink Pantheress and her entire branding. The Union Jack doesn't just serve as a symbol of nationalism anymore. It can be style, it can be irony, it can be confidence, it can be subversion, it can be pride. It's all over Black British music, and it's also all over fashion, Black British fashion too, to be specific. What is Black British fashion? What the fuck is that? That's not for this video, but there is Black British fashion. There is less of a desire to stand outside of Britain, and I think an increasing desire and more of a willingness to say, this is ours too. Black people being in pubs is more than just about drinking. I think it's so much deeper than that culturally. I think it just means that we have a lot more confidence in occupying these national spaces. I think it also shows that we're no longer intimidated by symbols that were once coded as white. It means that us belonging in this country is allowed to be a lot more casual, which is really important. And this is not me saying that Britain is not a racist country, because it is, and I will stand on that till the day that I die. The hell that I've experienced at the hands of this country, at the hands of this country's immigration system, oh brother, do I have stories for you. But interestingly, I think that this shift is signaling somewhat a normalization of multicultural Britain in ordinary life. Real authentic inclusion to me is not seeing Black people in a Nike ad. It's not DEI statistics. It's feeling comfortable in mundane places. Not to say that those things are important, because they are, but it's seeing us be able to walk into a pub and partake in such quintessentially British experiences because we too are British and this place is ours too. Being able to treat an institution like a pub so casually, I think that is what belonging looks like, especially given the history and the context that I've said before. Pubs have not always been the most welcoming places for us. And nowhere captures this shift more than Weatherspoons.
Weatherspoons in 2026 summer is coming like it's AFCON.
Lots, you see this summer, it's a Weatherspoons summer, blood. You see, man, I don't know about the Weatherspoons thing. You're missing out on life.
I'm not the one to say it, but why is there just a surplus of my skin colour entrance spoons now?
Guys, I came back to Weatherspoons for the second time. Guys, I was here yesterday. I had two. I'm back and I'm... Sugar, sugar, sugar!
Weatherspoons has single-handedly industrialized and democratized the pub. It stripped away some of this territorialism of the more traditional local pubs. No one expects you to be a regular, and you don't need any of the white social capital, i.e. white over working class male social codes to be able to walk in and enjoy your time there. You walk in, you order on the app, you get your pints, you get your Chardonnay, you get your buffalo wings, and then you leave. It's cheap, it's often city centre based, and it's full of mixed crowds. You've got students, you've got immigrants, black friendship groups, hen do's, stag do's. It asks of you a very different thing that traditional pubs ask of you. Spoons just wants your money and a good time. Now, I have to also talk about the UK black girl aesthetic in this video, which I know is a pain point for people, but I still think it's a very important, very small, but also very important part of this conversation because there is a gendered layer here. Pub culture traditionally values dressing down. It values casualness, but I think that casual is very relative to culture. For many black women, I think casual to us still reads as full face beat, middle part bust down. Do you know how long it takes to install a wig? I think that dressing up to white people is often just baseline presentation for us. And that's because, you know, beauty standards, global beauty standards ask for a lot more from women of color, black women specifically, than they do of white women. So black women entering pub spaces, it can sometimes be read as too much or overdressing. You know, you're doing way too much for the pub. When really we're just operating under a very different beauty standard. But Weatherspoons has also changed that. I'm seeing girls in lashes, full face beats, wigs, heels, birthday dresses, seeing the girls come in on their stag do's, all walking into a space that was once heavily associated with men, old men and pints. I think that's very telling of a huge shift. That too is a kind of democratization. To close my thoughts on this, I think what's most interesting about this shift is that it isn't a diversity initiative. It's not a strict policy that's been put in by the government. There isn't a mandate saying we need to get more black Brits in the pub. It's something that's a lot messier and more organic than that. It's a combination of the cost of living, making Weatherspoons the most affordable place for all of us, blacks included. It's Gen Z needing somewhere to exist outside their childhood bedrooms or their 7-person flat share. It's a generation of Gen Z black artists deciding that the Union Jack belongs to them too. It's TikTok comment sections where everyone is suddenly aggressively proud to be British the second anyone outside of our home says anything about our home. None of these through any means of legality or actual like national reform have set out to change who is welcome in a pub, and yet here we are. I think this is actually one of the most honest forms of social change, something that is accumulating very quietly in the most ordinary of places, and it's quite nice to watch. I guess it is these small sort of mundane ordinary spaces that, to me, if there is social change, if there's cultural shift in those spaces, then I think we're headed in the right direction, because they tend to be the spaces that are harder to crack. And Britain is a racist country, don't get me wrong. I won't dress that up. You know, none of the structural issues have been resolved just because Gen Z black kids are drinking Guinness now. But what I find interesting is that this sense of belonging is moving in a way that I guess is beating institutions. These young black Brits are claiming space in the most traditional, most symbolically loaded parts of British culture. And that is not a small thing, that is a really big thing. You know, that's what the pub was for. It was supposed to be a public house, but for a long time, that experience wasn't for us. But I love that we're slowly colonizing it and, you know, assimilating into British culture in a way that feels a lot more unified than before. Anyway, those are my takes. Those are my thoughts. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Please do leave your comments, because it is a conversation that I want to continue having, because I'm sure there are lots of nuances that I missed. I did put this video essay together in like a day, so I'm sure there's a lot more that people want to touch on. But yeah, please also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, hit that follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, because all of this goes a long way. But I'm so excited for the next video essay, guys. So Thank you. Mwah. Bye, bye, bye.